Welcome to the finishing section of Bead Embroidery Essentials. I'm Ann Benson, founder of Beads East. I truly enjoyed being your guide in the bezeling and decorating sections, and now I'd like to show you some techniques for finishing your bead embroidery piece in a truly professional manner. The front of your embroidery is beautiful now, but the back, well, not so much. Take a look at mine, and I do this for a living. Not gorgeous, but we are going to enclose all those threads. It's actually quite easy. Let's first glue the ultra suede backing over the threaded back. Our brooch has a relatively small backing area. We really don't need to glue the ultra suede in place. But in larger pieces, gluing is often necessary. So let's learn this important technique anyway. First, let's trim off any excess threads that protrude from the main threaded area. Now we can spread a thin, even layer of glue on the back. The glue will come out in threads or globs, so use a scrap of cardboard to even it. If it's too thick in any area, you may have a hard time getting the needle through it for the edging beads. Make sure the glue extends beyond the threading. Smooth out any thick areas or air bubbles with your fingertips. You can shape your piece with the backing in place. I force a curve on almost every bracelet I make, so it will wrap more comfortably around the wrist. Your jewelry is a garment, after all, and it needs to fit comfortably. If you leave a bracelet flat while edging it, you'll find that the backing material will pucker when you try to wear it. So before the glue dries, I wrap it around a cylinder, like a soft drink can or an aerosol can. Use elastics, fairly loose, to hold it all together as it dries. And if you have a particularly large expanse on the back of a piece, you may find that it pulls away, even if it's glued. Bury your tiny knot in a densely beaded area of the front, then bring the thread out of the back and insert the needle through the ultra suede in almost the same spot. You won't really see it later. We're using ultra suede as the backing for our finished piece. It doesn't ravel, its surface is even and uniform, and it can be cut into any shape. The available colors are lovely, and a gloving needle passes through it easily. Leather is also great as a backing. There are literally multitudes of colors, patterns, and textures available in leather, many of them true gems of design. Always use good quality garment weight leather, which is supple and has an even thickness. You can find ultra suede in many fabric stores. It is quite expensive, usually $60 or more per yard, but in some stores you can buy it by the linear inch or in a pre-cut piece smaller than the full width. Leather is sold by the whole skin, in pre-cut pieces based on square footage, or in scraps. Now it's time to trim off the excess nonwoven and ultra suede. We do this with the front of the work facing us. Use small sharp scissors. I generally make a rough trim first, then go back and make the final fine trim. Keep the scissor blades perpendicular to the surface, or the edge will be angled, which will distort the look of your edge beads when we add them next. Clean up corners and curves if necessary. Now this next step is optional, but I almost always use a permanent marker of a similar color to fill in any white areas along the edge. If you do this, be careful not to let the ink soak into the ultra suede. So now we're ready to add the edging beads that will hold it all together. The edging method we'll use for our brooch is a variation of the standard brick stitch. We'll start at the base and work around the entire piece, then join the last bead to the first for a seamless edge. We're using size 11/0 beads for the entire edge. You can use smaller or larger beads. We're going to add some decorations to the edge, so we need a bead that has a decent-sized hole. Secure the thread within the non-woven surface in a densely beaded area near the right side of the long arc of 8 O's. Bring the thread out of the ultra suede back less than 1/8 of an inch from the cut edge. Pick up 2 beads. Insert the needle through the ultra suede from back to front, making sure to catch both the ultra suede and the non-woven. Take the slack out of the thread, but not too tightly. Now run the needle outward through the second bead. Tighten the thread so this bead sits neatly on the surface. The first bead will still flop around, but we'll correct that when we join the first and last beads of the entire edging. Now pick up another bead. Run from back to front again about 1 bead's width away. Take the slack out, and run outward through the bead. Tighten the thread so this bead sits neatly on the edge. Let's take a look at an animation overview of this technique. I like to keep a small plier on hand because sometimes it's difficult to pull a needle through the edge or to add tiny decorations once the edging is in place. And that's it. Work all around the edge in this manner, with the sides of the beads just touching. Don't cram them in, or the edge will buckle. When you are edging along a curve, which we are, fan your threads either concave or convex. This will create a neater appearance. On a convex corner, spread the threads out as needed for the sharpness of the corner. It's better to have a gap in the threads than a gap in the beads. Trim a concave corner slightly to round it before edging. Try to avoid placing a bead directly in the center of the corner if you can. When we get back to the starting point, we need to join the last bead to the first. As you approach the joining point, try to space the beads so the joint will have a nice appearance. After adding the last bead, tighten the thread as usual, then run the thread inward through the first bead. Adjust the thread so the bead sits on the edge, then run the thread from front to back to secure it. You've just completed a professional quality seamless edge. Secure the thread invisibly within the edge of the piece. If your remaining thread length is more than 12 inches, don't cut it. We'll use it to start the decorations. If it's less than 12 inches, trim it. Needle up a new thread if necessary. Bring the thread out of an edge bead a couple of beads down from the curve around the 6mm crystal. Now take a look at your print directions for the beads you'll use in each of the 6 fringes that we'll add to the base of the brooch. They're shown in full detail in the printed guide. I'll walk you through the placement of each fringe, including how it should be attached to the edge and why the attachment method is important. All of the 15 O's in the fringes are Miyuki's. The rightmost fringe is situated on a diagonal edge, so, without intervention, it would protrude outward a bit. We want it to hang downward. Here's how to force that. Pick up the beads of the entire fringe. Bypass the leaf and the 14 O's on both sides of the leaf, then run through all but the last of the remaining beads. Run the thread through the next edge bead to the left. When you take the slack out of the thread, the bead you skipped will push the fringe downward. Adjust the thread tension so the thread is not visible, but the fringe still moves freely. The next 3 fringes are each worked in and out of 1 edge bead. They'll drape nicely because the edge section is less slanted. Follow the print directions to pick up the correct beads and follow the thread path to place these 3 fringes. The 5th fringe is worked over 2 edge beads. Pick up the beads as shown. Skip the last bead picked up, then run back through all the remaining beads. Now run the thread inward through the next left edge bead. The last fringe is forced in a similar manner to the first, though it's mirrored. Start by picking up 7 15 O's and then the remaining beads of the fringe. Run through all 7 15 O's. Now pick up 1 additional 15 O and run through the next edge bead to the left. Again, adjust the thread so the fringe hangs as you want it to. Now we'll add some of those 3-bead picots to the left side. It's not possible to determine precisely how many edge beads you'll place because the bead sizes vary within every batch, so don't worry if you have more or fewer picots than are shown in the example. Weave in and out of the edge beads, placing 3 15 O's over every pair of edge beads, following the red path shown in the print directions. Along the top curve, we'll add 2 different decorations. Bring your thread out of the first or second bead in this section and pick up one 8/0 and one 11/0. Skip the 11/0 and run back through the 8/0, then through the next edge bead, so the decorations sit over a pair of edge beads. Add 6 or 7 of these units, then add a 6/0 to the mix. Place the larger decorations over 4 or 5 pairs of edge beads. Work down the right side with picots in Miyuki 15/0s as you did on the left side. When you've added as many picots as you can, secure the thread invisibly within the non-woven, then trim it. The stitching is complete. Now let's add the pin back. Choose a back that fits between the top 2 inward corners. Glue is helpful in securing the pin back, but don't depend on glue alone or you'll lose the brooch. A good-looking method for securing a pin back is to hold it in place with beads over the sewing holes. Make a small knot in a doubled thread, trim off most of the excess after the knot, then bring the needle through all the layers from front to back so it runs through one of the holes in the pin back. Pick up a bead just slightly larger than the hole and run back through the sewing hole from back to front. You may need to angle the needle to avoid the stones on the front. Now work through the layers to the next sewing hole, again keeping the thread invisible, and add another bead. Do this until all the sewing holes have anchoring beads. Secure and trim the thread. Well, you did it! You've learned the basic techniques that will enable you to conquer even the most dramatic and complex bead embroidery pieces. It's been my pleasure to be your guide as you acquired this essential beading knowledge. I'm Ann Benson of Beads East. Thanks again for allowing me into your bead world, and please let me back in again soon.